Families checking out of January 14th are returning to habitable homes or withdrew from FEMA assistance. That's what the people that they're saying that are the only ones leaving the program. There was multiple hotels that told us there was multiple counts that had not been extended, and those families were saying that they had nowhere to go and that their homes were not habitable.
Hey, it's Jordan. I am in Flint, Michigan, East Palestine, Ohio, Tumwa, Iowa. Please support the only independent outlet on the ground covering what the corporate media covers up.
Thanks for watching Status Coup. My name is Jason Peters. Today we are in Asheville, North Carolina, still discussing hurricane relief, dealing with FEMA, and surviving a disaster 100 days out. Sitting with me now is Autumn Mullins from United Appalachia. Thank you for talking with me. I was drawn to talking to you because you were on the live stream earlier today at the propane drive, and you seemed particularly savvy and involved with dealing with the government and FEMA.
The issue with that we're finding with FEMA now is we've got FEMA saying that the only people being on the street is people who have habitable homes or ones who have voluntarily left the program. But we have families who've come up to us from these hotels that are saying, actually, I don't have a habitable home. It's filled with mold. FEMA has not done an inspection like they said they would. And they are basically kicking us out on the street and we have nowhere safe to go. FEMA is saying nobody is going to be houseless. No one's going to be on the street. And that is actually incorrect information. We fought really hard over the weekend to get an extension until yesterday.
Because it was supposed to end on Sunday, correct?
It was supposed to end on Saturday. Some of them were ending on Friday. We got an extension until the 14th, which I think is today.
Yeah.
Then we went on to the next rounds of getting another extension at least through the cold, harsh weather that we're dealing with. We've not seen this kind of weather in over 30 years, and our homeless population has exploded since 2020, and the city of Asheville and Buncombe County has not done anything to provide more shelter. So you tap that information with Hurricane Helene, and our homeless population has quadrupled. So now we're dealing with the next influx of families who've lost their homes or have been evicted. There was never an eviction moratorium like there should have been.
There was no eviction moratorium?
Eviction moratorium, and I even lost my job. So, people have been getting evicted left and right. I'm getting evicted right now. So that's a whole nother story.
Is it? It seems like the same story.
It's all the same story as is there's no jobs. People are getting evicted. People don't have cars. They don't have phones. They don't have they don't have any way to rebuild their life. And we're literally having to wait by FEMA for the day of the extensions expiring to say, oh, well, we're going to extend it one more time. But the issue right now is that they told us they were going to have a blanket extension yesterday. We had that on a congressional hearing, on a call that they were going to announce at 11 a.m. Silence from FEMA all up until 7 p.m. We were calling them, begging them, asking them to update these hotels that were calling us saying, hey, we've not gotten any updates. And unfortunately, their update that came out last night, was not what they told us on the congressional call. They said that people who were eligible will be extended. However, we already knew they would be extended because we know who's eligible. The ones who are being told they're uneligible are the ones who are absolutely without. FEMA's essentially. I mean, I hate to say this because I want to work with FEMA. I would rather be on the same page with them, but they're lying. They're not doing their due diligence. I can't tell you how many hotels I've talked to that says FEMA doesn't call and check in. FEMA doesn't know how many have actually checked out or have checked in. And over half of the hotels in Asheville alone have not been paid from FEMA, of the hotels.
Couple questions. Yeah. Has FEMA been lacking this whole time, or has it only been since the LA fires have started? This whole time. So many of us couldn't get $750. I've got families who have
$500,000 worth of their property that they've paid for, and FEMA's come back with $30,000 for them, saying you can't use this money for anything other than the rebuilds. But these families actually technically can't rebuild on those lands now because they are floodplains now, because they had to expand the floodplains with the, unprecedented storm that we now might see again in the future.
We spoke there, and there has been a lot of confusion today and yesterday. A lot of this weekend, folks were getting kicked out of FEMA voucher temporary stay visits in hotels that last week to week. And just as we sat down to do this interview, Senator Ted Budd put out a tweet that reads, "I have spoken with @FEMA Deanne, and we are working through the list of those in need of lodging, and if you are in need of assistance, please contact my office." And you said this is exactly why people are confused.
Yeah, well, the first one right there.
The first tweet.
My office is hearing from dozens in WNC who have been kicked out of their hotels tonight, despite FEMA's announcement yesterday that they were extending transitional sheltering assistance through January 25th. So there's confusion. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of confusion. Some people are saying FEMA's announcement last night at 7 p.m. should have covered everybody, but they used very specific jargon, like political jargon.
Could you take me through that jargon?
Yes. So I probably should have already had this pulled up with
No, that's perfectly
FEMA, but
fine.
their announcement, I've got it right here. It's just what they had put on X, and that was the first time they had announced anything after we were waiting on them since 10:30, 11 a.m. that morning when they were supposed to announce anyway.
How long have people been in hotels? Has it only been since it got cold, or have people been in hotels since the disaster struck?
It's kind of been a mix of things. There's been a lot of people who were in immediately after Helene who have now moved into campers. There are some that have found other places to go. A big uptick that we're seeing is people have gotten evicted from their homes and they are now in FEMA hotel vouchers or TSA. And I think that's called the Temporary Shelter Association, or actually cut that part out because I'm not sure. I always get it mixed up. So I'm trying to, it's TSA. I'm sorry that I don't know on the top of my head. It's been, but FEMA basically, there's been an uptick and a move down of people who were houseless before, people who've been evicted because there was no eviction moratorium. But it's all started since September, but it's kind of done this. I mean, I'm sure there's some people that have even not had, that have gotten out and gotten back in. We just don't know. And we don't have a specified updated list from FEMA on these hotels on who's actually where.
So walk me through a couple of things you said there. So there is no eviction moratorium right now. So people are getting evicted from their homes 100 days after a natural disaster and in the middle of the winter.
Yes. Yeah.
And on top of that, it has been planned in FEMA's schedule to evict people from these temporary stays in these hotels in the middle of the winter.
Well, I don't think FEMA understands what's going on here. I think that there's a major disconnect between FEMA and the workers of FEMA here on the ground. I don't think they're doing their due diligence and what they're supposed to be doing. I don't see them either. So when you ask that question of, did FEMA know if they were going to kick these people out? I think that they are assessing a situation that they're copying from Florida hurricanes. And this is completely different. And I do not think that they're actually taking a step back and saying, okay, they have a lot more factors than Florida does. They've got snow, they've got ice. They've never had as many destroyed roads and bridges like they do in Western North Carolina. They've, 300 square miles of disaster and high terrain, which is a lot different of a cleanup than a flat terrain. Florida is predictable. This is not, especially with landslides and springs and old growth rock or old growth trees and very old rock. So they don't have a playbook for this natural disaster.
So in your opinion, what has FEMA gotten wrong?
That's such a loaded question.
Maybe you could give bullet points.
Well, for starters, they were very delayed. I think that their response time, I feel with the power of Helene and how nervous everybody was for her and the trajectory and the known trajectory, I think that they, knowing about climate change and knowing about how things are getting worse and worse, they should have at least had the thought to go ahead and pre-mobilize or have at least a small team ready or be thinking about up here in Georgia, Tennessee, North Carolina, and South Carolina in a central part because they had these projections. Another thing was coming up here and not relying on the locals to tell them where to go. We had, this happened by chance. It's a crazy story that you can't even believe. We had a team of volunteers go out to Avery County to make contact with an organization that it was a charity, and we were just trying to get plugged in where we knew out there was bad. And we already wanted to lift those who we already knew would be helping other people.
Yeah.
So I had sent 2 volunteers out there, and they couldn't find this charity. Their doors were closed. Obviously, no one was there. And so they found the National Guard just chilling in a parking lot. And we all know about Swannanoa. Like, everyone's rushing to Swannanoa.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying their best to, like, show up there. And there's no FEMA there yet. It's just us. And we found the National Guard, it looked like. And Taylor, one of the volunteers, she walked up, was like, "What are you guys doing here? Why are you not in Swannanoa?" And they're, "Swannanoa? What's Swannanoa?" And so they bring her to the Sergeant Jackson, and they literally told them about it. And they said, "We've been waiting here for FEMA to call us for 3 days. We have no idea what's going on." And so then they called them and told them, and then they were like, they got them to go. Then they got sent to Swannanoa. And I think they made their way to Black Mountain.
But so
it's a crazy story.
So from my perspective, that feels preposterous because
It does.
It's Tuesday evening. I interview on Tuesday evening. Myself and John, who's behind the camera, landed here on Saturday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
By 5 o'clock, we knew to be in Swannanoa.
Mm-hmm.
And we have no military intel.
But that's because you're here this past Saturday. Everybody knows about Swannanoa. I say that respectfully. But before that, I mean, so many people say Swannanoa wrong. They're like, Swannanoa. Swanoa. We got a lot of Swanoas from random people, but so they didn't know. And this is coming from my volunteer. I talked with Sergeant Jackson. I mean, they had told us they saw them like in their car driving by. I don't know how many trucks and how big of a cavalry there was, because you had all of these immediate volunteers show up in Swannanoa as well, with airdrops, and Savage Freedom Ops got there pretty soon, and there was multiple different organizations that kind of rushed there. But as far as having that small crew and no one else had seen those trucks, I mean, the stories I could tell you about what's happened, but that's not why we're here today.
Yeah, so talk me through some of the work that you've been doing in particular.
Hold on, I want to stick with this because. So, who was the first responders on the scene? Was that like the local police and the firefighters? Then they have to get.
Yeah, as you go, but I'll ask it so that in the video, the continuity.
Yeah. It's like, FEMA has a 100. I don't know, million, billion, whatever they are, and like logistics is extremely important. And if they're like military, they're at that level, they should be able to function at that level.
They should.
And it's a failure on that part.
That's a huge failure.
Yeah. So my question for you is, in this situation, a disaster strikes, who is supposed to be the first responder and who actually was the first responders on site?
Well, it was definitely our first responder EMTs and fire department and our policemen. I mean, what they went through is unprecedented. But there was so much that there's a lot of places being missed too, because they couldn't do it all. Even a lot of them, there's been a couple of them that had passed helping people, so they were taking hits left and right, and they lost a lot of equipment so they can operate in their best way too. So, I mean, that's when a lot of private pilots started coming, and there was a lot of private choppers that started showing up, and we didn't have many military choppers out here because, again, they don't understand how, like, Appalachian mountains sometimes there's like a lot of, we can cuss, right?
Yeah.
A lot of shit on Appalachian mountains sometimes where they're like, oh, they're so small because everybody's been in the Rockies and they're from California and it's great, don't get me wrong. But when you really get into there and you see the kind of difference of why we love it here and you kind of get to know these mountains, they're still scary as shit and crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I've had to drive through them this whole trip.
Yeah, and people don't give them enough credit and they just maybe not go to the right places. But I think that, it's unfortunate, but I don't think they knew. I don't think they understood. But the problem is they didn't listen to us when we were trying to tell them. And so we were trying to tell them, like, hey, this is what needs to happen. Please believe us. Please help us. Give us funding. Let us do this. All of this jazz. You have people who have come here for Asheville, and they're sitting in suits in the White House or in the different part of the state, and they have in their mind what it's like here. And Asheville is a wonderful part of Appalachia, but Appalachia is a lot different than Asheville when you go out to these absolute devastated places. Asheville is not a singular reflection. And I'm just talking about land-wise. People-wise, like our art and our food.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it was kind of a great place to have everyone congregate. But
Congregate?
Congregate. It's been a long day. Congregate, originally, yeah, Asheville, that's what kind of everyone kind of came together as a voice. But
let's get back to the FEMA jargon of it all. What exactly are you talking about when you say that they're denying people based off jargon and there's a specific way you have to speak with them to get what you need? So
what started yesterday, what we thought was an extension, was when they had verbally confirmed that they would have a blanket extension and that these people that we knew had checkouts for yesterday and today, they had no answers, and they also were telling us they had nowhere to go. And so FEMA said they were automatically going to extend. FEMA was supposed to make an announcement. There was never any announcement, and we had waited for that. We started having hotels call us and tell us, because we had already talked to them about their vouchers, because another thing, we were told we have been told to get lists for FEMAs at the hotels we're talking to. I mean, we told them that some hotels are saying they're not being paid by FEMA, and FEMA said, well, get us a list. And but the jargon, I'm sorry. There's more. We'll get there, and I'm sorry this is all over y'all, but it's a big crazy mess. So they were supposed to extend, and then when they put out, FEMA is extending transitional sheltering assistance hotel stays until January 25th for 3,000 plus who are eligible. Okay. 3,000 plus who are eligible. The key word is are eligible. They also listed a number, 3,000 plus. There is more than 4,000 families in these programs right now. There's, I think, I have the specific number that I would need to pull that up. And I'm happy to, we will. But I want to talk about this jargon. Families checking out of January 14th are returning to habitable homes or withdrew from FEMA assistance. That's what the people that they're saying that are the only ones leaving the program. Mm-hmm. There was multiple hotels that told us there was multiple accounts that had not been extended, and those families were saying that they had nowhere to go and that their homes were not habitable. Now, the reasons, some of them were saying that their homes were too moldy, and it's going to affect their health. Some of them said that FEMA didn't even inspect their house. They had been waiting on an inspection, or their camper washed away. They couldn't get to the inspection. They tried to reschedule. FEMA hasn't called back. FEMA saying these people FEMA hasn't been able to reach, but it's actually the other way around. So there's also people who have been evicted, and their case is affected by Helene, but it's not your home has been destroyed. And FEMA hasn't been getting answers back to those people who are in the gray area because we didn't have an eviction moratorium. So a lot of people got evicted. And there's a bit more black and white than there needs to be for these people because they lost their jobs, they lost their cars, they couldn't get to work, people got fired, jobs closed down for months, people got behind on rent. So most everybody in these regions were affected by Helene in some way, and it caused even more financial damages on everyone. So when we got that information and the hotels were saying these families don't have anywhere to go, we started putting pressure on FEMA again to extend. We told them this last night about these families, and they still didn't extend it this morning. That's when we started showing, hey, this family doesn't have anywhere to go. This family doesn't have anywhere to go. They already had this information. The people who were eligible, we already knew were eligible. But we knew that there were some people who were showing that they were not eligible, and they were proving they had nowhere to go. And FEMA already had this information. They already knew about this. So that's the issue that we're finding is, why are we scrambling now? And who was that?
Ted Burns.
Ted Budd getting dozens of families saying they have no shelter. We've already told Ted Budd about this. We've already told Tom Tillis about this. They've already told FEMA about this. But why has FEMA not said anything? Why hasn't FEMA come back and said, we're going to go ahead and blanket extend while we figure out what's going on?
And the question of eligibility and ineligibility. Today on the live stream, we spoke to a couple that was deemed ineligible. And they've been living in a tent for the last 2 months with their 3 dogs because they're renters. And the fact that they're renters makes them ineligible from a lot of these programs because technically they didn't lose anything they own except their belongings. So they'll get I think he said he got a $300 check for some of his personal belongings, but nothing for losing where he lives.
Yeah, losing your home.
Yeah.
Yeah, because FEMA's offered $750 to those who had damaged homes. So the landlord would get that money. That's
what he said. He said because he was listed as an occupant under the landlord, the $750 went to his landlord.
And he got $350 for his couch, his kitchen table, his microwave, his nice speaker that he bought one Christmas, his pictures from his families or his graduation cap. I mean, this man's memories and his life was $300 to FEMA.
Have you spoken with or dealt with firsthand renters unable to get help or access?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely had people who fall under a category where it's hard to get certain assistance because they didn't own their home, or people whose landlords own these apartments and they have really bad water in their apartment and they can't use it. And I've seen pictures and the landlord's not doing anything about it. And so they're choosing not to go home in that apartment with bad water because they don't want to make themselves sick. Because they're actively choosing a place that's habitable, they're not eligible. And that's not true.
Yeah.
And when we bring these situations up to our representatives and they bring it to FEMA and FEMA comes back and says, well, we checked on them. They said they're fine. Where have you checked on them? This past Saturday, I was on hold with a woman with FEMA trying to get her extension. And we were on the phone for 5 hours waiting that morning. And she had been on that phone for 3 hours the night before. And we couldn't get through.
Is there any rhyme or reason to this? Because I've heard people are getting rejected because they applied for everything possible just because they needed stuff. And then they were told that if they would have just picked one thing, they would have gotten it.
I have not heard that.
Yeah. That came from the couple that's living in the tent.
Okay. Yeah, no, I've not heard that situation. Yeah, that's another thing too, is there have been incidences where people have applied for doubled and they've been helped doubled. But there's been a lot of people who don't know about the help, so they don't get the other double part. And so there's a big...
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned people not knowing about the help, because this is the first time I'm mentioning this on the entire reporting trip, because this information just came to me moments ago. I have a reliable inside source that has told me that the government has paid $37 million for marketing of assistance. So they've spent the contract was worth $37 million to get the word out about the FEMA assistance and about helping people in North Carolina.
If it's referring to FEMA, so many people have been denied FEMA and have tried appealing, and as soon as their appeal doesn't get through, they give up, and they really should appeal, but who has time for that? So if that is coming from FEMA marketing, they might have spent it on marketing, but nobody was getting approved by using it. Now, if it's government programs, I mean, my feed is nothing but Western North Carolina and East Tennessee on all my social medias. I'm their target market. I'm going to be the one that they want to show that to. I've not seen any of that. I've seen some, but it is mostly people posting and helping each other and people asking for help and our communities meeting it.
Well, I'm telling you this, my source on this, I can't out who the source is, but I can say that he works for a company that was bidding for the contract and lost.
Well, I don't blame that they've probably done that, but nobody I know has had help like that. Everybody here has said that we've been asking for help and we've been reaching out and it's not there. So from my experience and and I will be gladly wrong if other people have had a different point of view, because I'm not trying to say that's not true.
Well, you're the first person I've told. I figured that I was just told this night. Tonight.
Okay, yeah. From my perspective, no.
You haven't seen that $37 million?
No, and I feel like I would be their ideal market.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it's disaster job marketing. I mean, it depends on what kind of marketing it is. But if it's FEMA assistance, I mean, yeah, they've had a lot of posts about it, but nobody's been approved. I mean, everybody's not been approved. I mean, I didn't even apply because I knew I wouldn't be approved.
Why wouldn't you be approved?
Well, because even though my job went out for 2 months, I lost $300 worth of food that I definitely stocked up to be out for a couple days. And my car sustained damages. My house wasn't damaged, and you had to use specific jargon. If you applied in the first 4 or 5 days for FEMA, because my sister, she got it, and she was definitely better off than most, but she's very on top of these things, and they lost power. They lost, he lost his job, and they were needing assistance, but she applied within the first couple of days, and a lot of people did who had access, because some people got their Wi-Fi back after 5, 6, 7 days. But they were the first to, and then FEMA realized that funding went fast.
Yeah.
And it was very easy to get approved at first, and then it got extremely difficult.
Does it feel like there's any rhyme or reason to the way FEMA's moving, or has it just been kind of forgotten?
I think they don't know what they're doing, And I think that people, it's crazy to me that we have to fight for these extensions through the dead of winter in the mountains where we're experiencing Arctic weather that we haven't seen in 30, 40 years. That alone. And then we tap in the facts that since COVID, Asheville specifically has had a huge homeless population that they never fixed with shelters. There have been some shelters pop up, but nowhere near the amount that's needed. So with that, and now Helene, it's quadrupled. And just knowing that we have a lack of shelters here, they have to make sure that these people who, at no fault of their own, are not going to be stuck to their own devices, because we pay taxes not to be left to our own devices in moments exactly like this. So I don't know what FEMA's thoughts are, and I'm trying my best to be respectful, but now I'm just angry.
Yeah, I reached out to FEMA for comment, and just for safety, I'm going to see if they have responded to me. I don't believe they have.
That would be great. I wish y'all had been on the Chuck Edwards. He had a town hall meeting tonight for Western North Carolina on the phone. Yeah, we got the ping last second, and people will back me up on this. I'm gonna say this. Chuck Edwards himself said FEMA has bad communication, and I wrote down his quote because it was kind of crazy. And he said, FEMA has done some good, because we were asking him questions about this. He said, FEMA has done some good, but fact of the matter is, over the past couple of weeks, I will give them a solid D. And he said, they're horrible communicators. He said, you can't get them to communicate for anything. And he says, we will communicate and they will tell us something, and then in 30 minutes, they will go to the media and say something that is wrong. And to me, that's a fancy way of saying they lie.
Yeah.
Chuck Edwards said this. People will back me up, and I want that on record. So, Chuck Edwards, our congressman for Western North Carolina. Mm-hmm. So they know that FEMA is dragging their feet. They told them FEMA is absolutely refusing at this point to give aid, and they know it's needed. And they keep making us celebrate for those extensions when we shouldn't have to be fighting for these extensions. They know we need it.
So the way I got the contact at FEMA was when we first landed, we saw one FEMA RV. Mm-hmm. It's the only FEMA RV we've seen the entire trip. Mm. And we skirted the car, and we walked up to it. And it said the FEMA agent's name, all of his information, phone number, email address. So I called him. I said, hello.
Very interesting.
I said, hello, and I told him who I was. I said, I have questions. And I didn't have many questions because I just landed. This was the first thing we came across. And he was scared shitless because he didn't expect someone to see, I guess, his phone number that he taped to his window. And then he gave me the email address to the specific North Carolina FEMA people. And I reached out to them. I asked 4 questions. I said, why are you discontinuing housing vouchers for hotels for displaced people? I asked, I said, there's a fleet of RVs in Asheville sitting unused that are FEMA branded. What's that about? I asked how many people are still missing, and I asked how many people are dead. No response. I asked 4 questions. 4 pretty easy to answer questions. If you're FEMA, if you are the government's disaster preparedness unit, and a journalist asks you how many people have died, that should not be a controversial question. That should be a number that is constantly updated. And what I have found is that the number of 105 is everywhere. I've seen 105, 103, and 104 across every outlet I see, and seemingly not updated since mid-November. Mm-hmm. And FEMA won't tell me if those numbers are accurate. Mm-hmm. And as a member of the press, it's my job to try to get that. And that strikes me as odd. Do you at all believe that FEMA has Western North Carolina's best interest in mind, or is telling the truth about anything?
I'm trying to answer that not only logically, reasonably, but based on my experience with them. Mm. That's a heavy question. Do I think FEMA has Western North Carolina best interest in mind? I don't think they know our best interest. Do I think that they lie? Yes, I do, because I think that they don't want to admit that they don't know what they're doing, and they don't have our best interest because they don't know them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think that it's kind of like when you lie to your mom that you did your math homework because you really just want to play video games, but you couldn't finish those last 3 questions because they were so hard. So now you're going to get a 40 instead of like an 80 because you didn't try. That's kind of how I feel FEMA's acting, because they have done some good. They have done some help. Mm-hmm. But there is a lot of help that's needed, and there's a lot of help that's not being received. As far as the numbers go, what's the biggest concern is that they haven't updated since November, and there's a reason for that. They're trying to play a facade, try and save face of Western North Carolina because we're such a touristy spot. If people knew just how dirty and really gory these hills memories hold, and how heavy the air is now, if you really knew what happened here, you would never look at here the same again. I mean, you would feel guilty going places because you know things about that place and people that have, gone to the next spot there, or people where you last saw them. And they don't want people to know that.
So, let's get granular. Talk to me about the specific work that you do dealing with FEMA. Let's stay specific. Like, what today have you done that is based around FEMA and dealing with FEMA?
So essentially today, I arrived at extended stay Asheville because I knew that families were going to be displaced there. My original hopes were to get a press conference and have a station set up where they can come and fill out these forms that we have from Senator Tom Tillis's office for them to file out, because for them to bring to FEMA to say, hey, actually, you tell us one thing, well, here's the proof of another. And it was kind of like crazy chaos there.
I was going to say, before you go any further, talk me through what you just said. Did Senator Tillis make a form that you could distribute to the FEMA, the people that needed temporary housing?
Right, yeah. So they have a privacy authorization form, which basically is essentially like a basic version of the FEMA application that people gave to FEMA. And people are telling his office, hey, this is my situation. It's crazy, but I need housing. I can't get to my house. This is why. And they're giving it to Tom Tillis because FEMA has this information. But when Tom Tillis's office asks them for this information, they come back and say, sorry, privacy laws, we can't get this to you. So they can't even communicate. So they have to listen what FEMA says. So yeah, showing up at extended stay to get them these forms for them to give to Senator Tillis so they can come back with FEMA and make a case that, hey, there's a huge disconnect. You're telling us one thing about these families, we're getting another. And it was pretty much chaos. People are in the halls with their carts filled with everything that they own. People didn't want to answer their door when I was knocking on them to give them the form and check in with them, because the hotel had a list of what was checking out. I was going room to room because I was hoping everyone was going to be in the lobby. I got there about an hour early, hoping everyone would kind of congregate, but I know.
It's a hard word. You don't do it.
When you're like mid-sentence, but the hotel, was very respectful and nice to let me go door to door with these things, because they were not going to put these people on the street by 11. They were like, they're going to have to move their whole life. We're giving them however long they need, as long as they're, out before tonight. So they've been great. And yeah, it was give them the form for, Senator Tillis' office, and they were going to present it to FEMA. I was hoping the more families I could get to with the forms, they can, FEMA was going to see them and say, okay, we're going to now extend it, because that's what we did on Saturday, was we were able to prove names and addresses, and that's how we got that first extension. But we did it again, and they didn't say anything. And then that's kind of when, after that, I'm currently being forced in my own apartment, so I'm having to find a house too, and I had been waiting on news about a house, so I got a call, and I had to do some application things, because I have to be out by the end of this month, and I'm racing against time for my own shelter. But
so you're getting evicted currently while helping other people prevent getting evicted?
Basically, my landlord had put me on a month-to-month lease, and they decided not to renew that month-to-month, even though
that's an eviction. That's a soft fire. Like if you were at your job, we're like, we're going to switch you to a month-to-month contract. You know what?
Yeah,
we don't need you. Yeah. We don't need to renew anymore.
We don't need it anymore. And I've been there for almost 5 years. So yeah, I think that they just want more money. Yeah, that's what they're doing. I have a really nice apartment for dirt cheap. So love it. Bye. But yeah, I had to fill out some application things because that had to take precedence. And I will admit that. Sorry for everybody. Couldn't save everybody.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to save everybody if you don't have a
also,
house.
Yeah, so I had to take care of what's going on. And then after that, you know, we were really trying to push visibility. That was my main goal today, was just find as many people as I can that is being out on the street and getting them connected with that form and them sending it into Tom Tillis' office. And the more we did, the faster we did, the more we would get an extension. That didn't happen. So now we're at a point where we're doing damage control and we're trying to make contact with all of these families that are on the street right now. Actually, after this, I have a number of people that I've got to check back in with on where they're going tonight and trying to pair different donors for their...
And for people at home, it is 10:39 at night. So she's going to leave this interview and then...
Go make contact.
Is the form available on your website?
It's not. We are giving these forms to people like who ask for them. Mm-hmm. It's not, you know, universally everybody take this form. It's people who are contacting us and they're asking, hey, I actually need some housing or I need an extension too. And then we give them this form and they send it back and we give it to the office. So
there's many grassroots community-based organizations here in Western North Carolina trying to organize and keep people safe and in their homes. What else needs to happen? Because outsider's perspective, it's only gonna, these people are only gonna be able to do this for so long. Bank accounts will run out.
They already, yeah.
And burn out.
Already have, yeah.
So what needs to happen for Western North Carolina? In your opinion, like what dream scenario, you wake up tomorrow and a few things happen, tangible things, what would that be?
Well, what needs to happen is not tangible. You ask every organization and they will all agree we could use at least 10,000 civic engineers and 100,000 Army Corps here. And them divide into teams and not only plug into those spaces where the cadaver dogs have already hit, but they working on people's homes. Because, I mean, I know a guy who took his excavator, a home was condemned. All they had was mud in their basement that was giving them a danger of collapsing or whatever. They used a mini skid steer or mini excavator and moved it all out, and now they saved their home. Just as simple as that. There's bridges, so people have to walk up to their houses and they're not able to get to their jobs, or they're having to quit their job or be away from their home because they can't lose their job. So, I mean, North Carolina, we need people, we need hands, we need funding. That's a huge thing. We need money. We need people to have, we need an eviction moratorium and a rent hold. We need to be given like 3-4 months where none of us pay our bills for a little bit. We need Duke Energy to stop hiking prices, and the water. They've been charging, people got charged on their electric bills when they didn't have energy for 12 days. They charged me like $80-something, and I didn't have power for 12 days. And they charged me for it.
And that is one of the few things I can draw a direct comparison to LA on. I saw the mayor of LA, Karen Bass, who has her own problems. I'm not saying Karen Bass is great. One of the first things she put out, I think it might have been today or yesterday, was if you see anyone doing price hiking, report them at this link.
Yeah, they could have done that because the campgrounds here for the campers, they've exploded. I mean, there's some people paying like $700 a week or $700 a month for a campground spot, like crowded around everyone else, or you're right next to a ravaged, horrible, destitute river, and they're paying $600-700.
So
I know one campground that's charging like $1,000 a month.
It seems like there's two sides of the Western North Carolina situation. There's, and I'm not saying that these are all of the people. This is just, there's the people that we've interviewed and the people that we've seen and witnessed that are devastated, have lost everything. But every time I'm in, for example, the Ace Hardware propane drive parking lot, I also see a lot of people moving on like life is normal. Because, and that's an interesting thing. We even interviewed a man on the live stream who was like, FEMA's doing great. And not to bash him, but he was at the propane drive because he needed propane for a glass blowing project. Mm-hmm. He wasn't doing it for his home. He was doing it for a glass blowing project. And he said FEMA was doing great and so on and so forth. And in that same vein, so you have over here, you have the people who have been devastated and then the people who are living life as usual. But then also you have the people who are uprooting their lives to help others. And people that are coming in from out of town and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. You have those people. But then on the flip side of that coin, you have the price hiking and profiteering. How do you function in an ecosystem that is simultaneously charitable and predatory? Mm-hmm. And you have to navigate, the average person has to navigate that, you know? Civilians, exactly. And you, by making a nonprofit, have kind of, you are a civilian, but you've put yourself in a place. You've said, this is what I'm going to do. But then there's all the other people that they don't have whatever you have inside of you to go forth and start a nonprofit, or maybe they don't have your resources or contacts or your skills and abilities. There's just people that are trying to get by that have to decipher the difference between profiteering and help.
Right. Well, first I want to state for the record that we're not quite a nonprofit.
Oh, God.
We have one more piece of paper to file. Mm-hmm. It's just a very expensive piece of paper.
Yeah.
And all my funding goes towards helping families with fuel and certain supplies. So I need to prioritize. I know that, but I did this to help people. So I'm like, okay, stop acting like a young adult, get your stuff done. But I've got to work for it. And I Uber, so you don't make much Uber. But going back to your huge difference of profiteering and so first, I do want to touch on what you saw at Ace Hardware of a guy with the glass blow. That's Asheville. I love my city. I'm from my city, but there's big parts of Asheville that have definitely disappointed me. And people are going through their own trauma. But I don't think that Asheville understands how destabilized every other town outside of it is. A big part wherein, we started really organizing with United Appalachia and inside, we were going hours out. I was pushing for everybody to go out. That's what I was searching for. Because Asheville was so stabilized very quickly compared to everybody else. I mean, we're technically the capital of Western North Carolina. We're the biggest metropolitan city, and we've got a huge town. We're the biggest city in town. So I was really hopeful that Asheville was going to kind of really build our pillar and then really build around and bring our communities in. But unfortunately, and this just shows why it's such a problem to be such a tourist-based city. But Asheville wanted to get back to bringing in the tourists, bringing in the money, really trying to pay things off, get the cleanup of River Arts District and Biltmore going, But with doing that, everybody around here had to go back to life being normal because your jobs pick back up. You still have to pay rent. There's no moratorium. You're also traumatized from the storm. I mean, you get nervous and scared when the rain picks up or the wind blows. So people got very distracted very easily. And that's the unfortunate part about it. So people need to actually realize that we're not okay and not say that FEMA's doing a good job, because they are, but they could be doing a whole hell of a lot better. And going to the profiteering, they should have had a link like they did with the mayor of, I mean, I haven't seen one. Everyone's talking about the scams, but nothing's being done about it. We've told the state of people making and raking in thousands and thousands of dollars and profiteering off of people's backs, and they're still operating. So I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know why there's so many scams officially that no one's doing anything about, and price hiking. So how do we navigate that? By the seams of our pants, you know? Like, I don't know how I'm navigating it. Everybody here will all have certain conversations where we just vent for 5 minutes and we're just like, is this real life? Like, what the fuck? And you snap back to it and you do one thing at a time. But the need is so great and so far. And our government, I mean, Red Cross is pulling out, you know, you've got major organizations pulling out. Lots of them are going to West or California. And we've barely just begun here. We've already been, you know, we needed a life raft. We've been in the water the whole time. And we've just now found a plank of wood. And we're kind of like this, but we're exhausted. And we really need a whole life raft. And we need, I mean, I would like to like calculate all of the money that's been spent on Western North Carolina, but it's over, last official report that I could get is $53 billion, okay? $53 billion of damages. I saw a number just a couple days ago, but the reason why I'm not confident on this, or not, I'm not certain about this number, not that I'm not confident, but I'm not certain, was over 60 billion. For North Carolina, that's unprecedented of any disaster that's ever occurred, and we have gotten not even a percentage of that money. I mean, the 37 million is, it's not even a drop in the bucket.
And that's all marketing. That's not for helping.
I know.
That's to market the idea of help.
So supposedly there's been about I think it's like 1 billion has been given to North Carolina. I need to double check that because I haven't been doing my due diligence lately about that because I just don't see it.
Well, who can be researching when there's people that need water, you know?
Exactly. It's like, I don't have time for that. Priorities, you know? But 1 billion, so it's crazy. If you took $5 billion of the 53, it's not even 10% of what we need. And then you take that about the mass exodus of people and the mass people who can't even take care of themselves right now, because a lot of people don't understand. People don't have birth certificates. They don't have their licenses. It takes time to get that from the state. Some people are injured. A lot of people don't have cars, transportation, so they have to rely on other people to get them to their appointments. So they miss them or they miss the inspection. I mean, we've got to have some kind of like major socialism, like, or socialized core, where they have a solid team of verifiers and you have different levels of aid to everybody that's here. You've got the people who've got their houses destroyed and their lives taken from them. Everything is gone. You've got the people who lost their job because of the flood, or they lost their car, or they have some crazy damage in their apartment. I mean, different stages of people. It shouldn't just be, did you lose your home or did you not? If you didn't lose your home, you're fine. No, we're not.
Well, not to state the obvious, but in America, one of the largest problems over the last few decades is that there is no social safety net. If shit goes wrong, it goes wrong. It goes real wrong. And it goes real wrong real fast. And a lot of people don't have, most people don't have the money to afford an emergency.
One paycheck away from homelessness.
Yeah.
That's what people say a lot.
And you see the effects of that in a place like Asheville and its surrounding counties and suburbs, or I don't know. I don't even think they are suburbs. They're little towns, you know.
Those are not suburbs.
I know, you can't call them suburbs. I haven't seen a suburb here. I've seen little towns.
Little towns. Yeah, and it's insane. It's absolutely asinine. I could talk to you for 4 hours, you know. So 2 questions. First one's real quick. What do you call a person from Asheville? What do you mean? Like, is it an Ashevillean? Ashevilleans. Is that actually it? Ashevillean. I'm only asking that so I can ask the second question, which is,
and this is just a general question, your opinion. How often does like the average Ashevillean go to a place like Clyde or like these small little towns? We were out in Burnsville today. Like, is there like, because where I'm from, I'll go out to the Poconos, I'll go out to East Stroudsburg, and I'm from Philadelphia. I'm pretty familiar with the surrounding area, and I'd like to think I have a good sense of what is everywhere.
But for Philadelphia, right?
But for where I'm from.
And how big is square miles of Philadelphia?
It's much bigger than all this.
All of Western North Carolina?
Oh, not square mileage. I don't know the square mileage of Philadelphia.
I know it's more municipal than here.
Yeah.
And bigger that way. But what I mean is like, you know, a town 30 minutes away from me is like 30 miles or 20 miles.
Yeah, 30 minutes will get you about 12 miles.
Yeah.
About 12. But I would say North Carolina and Pennsylvania are pretty comparable size-wise.
Right.
Yeah, but how often does the average Ashevillean interact with like the smaller towns?
I think a lot of Ashevilleans took up the bat of volunteering. They do at least something, you know, you're texting or you're sharing. I can't really speak on their behalf because I know a lot of Ashevilleans, but Asheville, you've got Asheville and you've got Asheville proper. So you've got like, Asheville are the people that are here, you know, in the city. A lot of them are snowbirds or they're from Florida and they've come to live in Asheville and they really stay in Asheville and they'll take occasional visits out to the mountains, you know, to visit or just to venture into the Blue Ridge Parkway. So as far as Asheville proper and locals, if you're from here and you're a native, you lived in Leicester, you've lived in Weaverville, you've lived in Hendersonville, Fletcher, Arden, Black Mountain, Fairview, kind of like out from Asheville a little bit. And those folks definitely, you know, because we saw this when we built out. So I don't want to say, I know there's a lot of people helping, especially like online work and putting their time and effort and sharing. I'm not trying to say that, but as far as showing up, we need to see more of it and more often, not just once a week or once a month. You know, people, if we're going to make any kind of headway, people have got to look at this and say, I'm going to offer every single Saturday, or I'm going to take off of work for a week and do that every couple weeks if you can. I think people need to get in a consistent rhythm of showing up for those places out there. And that's what I mean when I'm disappointed in Asheville is I don't see that. I see people kind of going back to their life and then going back to their relief and then going back to their life and then going back to their relief. And we need a consistent team of help because the people who are always out here, we're exhausted and our lives are slipping before our eyes. And we're having to do that because people here and then there, here and then there. People from outside are here and there, and we have no government here. So somebody has to do it consistently, you know? So I hope that like answered that.
It does in a way. We're about wrapping up. What is something that is important to you that you want to drive home to the people at home?
FEMA needs to extend the vouchers, and we need it till March. And we need money. I think, and when I say by money, there's a lot of scams right now. Verified sources, we're working on getting those out more so of having a stronger collective and having more trustworthy people stand up together to kind of share on the funding because we all don't consider this a competition. We're all in this together. My dollar is their dollar, you know. So I think the biggest thing right now is people need to say, FEMA, you need to extend these vouchers, and we need them extended until March. And that's because we don't have enough shelters. And that's because we're facing a winter that we've not seen in over 30 years. And that's what I want to say. And second part would be, do not forget North Carolina or East Tennessee or parts of South Carolina and Georgia and even Florida for a long time. But North Carolina and East Tennessee really could use a hug, like added support, because we've never seen something like this. And it's going to take a long time. So
would you like people to follow you on social media and keep up with what you're doing? Tell them.
Yeah, so you can visit us. We're most active on Facebook right now because we're part of all of those relief groups because there's so many of them and we get a lot done. United Appalachia. You also have unitedappalachia.org is our website. We are more active on our Facebook. We're trying to I need more people.
There's a lot of, I would just say this, Facebook's still big in North Carolina.
Yeah.
It's slipping up north. We don't use it much anymore, but
there's been a lot of TikTok.
Yeah.
I want to get more on TikTok, but yeah, that's where you'll follow tighter along, and that's because we're using our immediate connections to get things done.
Yep.
And you're happy to watch, and yeah, you can donate at unitedappalachia.org, and you can, join our newsletter once we get that going. So.
Well, thank you very much, Autumn. I appreciate you sharing your story with us and trusting us. Signing off for Status Coup, my name is Jason N. Peters at jpeters2100 from Asheville, North Carolina, with John Farina behind the camera. Thanks for watching.